This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.
The following is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
Dan Warren. And Joe Martek.
That's right.
And special guest star who likes to overpay for new cars, retired attorney Alan Love. He just gets such a kick out of overpaying a dealer.
It is a good-looking car, though.
It's a really good-looking car.
I like that car.
I love that color.
Yeah, that pearl white.
That pearl white. That's really, that's a neat-looking car. It looks really good on a guy with white hair, but it'd look much better on a young blonde girl.
I agree with that.
That's right.
In fact,
He's looking for a driver.
It'd look better on anybody else now that we think about it, especially if it was a girl. Anyway, it is a good-looking car. Just because you paid Sticker Plus and you fell asleep and had them sign all the paperwork when you weren't paying attention, it's not a big deal.
Well, you got to remember, Joe, that
5 years from now, you'll be dead anyway, and the car will still be going.
Anytime you roll anything that you owe,
Yeah.
like on a payment or a lease or something, it's going to be a little bit more. So that's really what how.
Well, that's
Alan
what
got
they
hammered.
did. They did that to him, and I'm so happy for him.
Usually, though, when you do buy a car, no matter where you buy it, they get what they get what they want to get for the deal.
Well, you can negotiate.
You
et
might
cetera,
walk
et cetera.
away feeling good about the deal, but they still got what they wanted.
Well,
Well, they have to be paid.
Yeah.
All those people have a paycheck.
Gotta
I mean,
keep the
I don't
lights
expect
on.
people to work for free.
Got to keep those marble floors polished.
A lot of those car dealerships make a lot of money in the repair side. Not just the sales side, but the repair side.
Well, they
is
really don't
massive.
make a long dollar selling cars. They really don't.
They have to.
Make
Come
their money in
on.
parts. No,
You'd be surprised.
They don't. There's not that much. It's not that big a
You
profit.
might get a little holdback on some financing. I mean, a little bit here, a little bit there.
Yeah.
I sell you an extended warranty. It
Yeah.
adds up.
That's
but,
all the
but
pieces.
if you buy none of the bells and whistles,
Yeah.
sometimes they don't make a whole lot.
Like
on
if you pay cash for a car,
Mm-hmm.
dealer's not happy about that. If he finances it, they get a kickback
Mm-hmm.
on the financing.
Yeah, and then they take you back in that little room and they size you up and tell you what finance charges they
course.
think you should deserve.
Yeah.
And it's going to cost you a little bit more for this, and
Well,
and
the
But
key-
in today's
the
technology
finance guy
age,
sells you more stuff.
In today's technology age, you should go and figure out what car you want. This is just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out what car you like, and then start figuring out where you can get the best value and what it should
Mm-hmm.
cost. And I always try to shop locally.
Yep.
There have been times when I've been forced to go down south because local people just wouldn't give me what I knew I could
yeah,
get.
you go to a bigger place, you may get a better deal because they deal in volume. They have more
volume,
people,
yeah.
they have
Well,
more customers.
Dealers get rebates back at the end of a year when they sell enough cars.
We tried to buy a car at the Ford dealer in Palm Bay, and they came out with this big, long piece of paper off their printer, and they went through, we can't find anybody who will finance for you. You are just the worst customer that ever walked in the door. And they took my big truck, and they wanted to sell me a tiny little car.
Little
And I
Ranger.
went, I'll keep my truck.
Of course.
Yeah, no, I think they were trying to sell us a Focus.
A Focus. But
Yeah.
you were too focused
I was
to
like,
not buy the
I was
Focus.
like, I know my credit's not this horrendous,
Yeah,
but they
right.
had this big trail of paper going, we're trying to find a bank that'll take you,
Yeah.
and it was like, see ya.
You can always find a bank to take somebody. It may not be at the rate you want, but
That's it.
that's the problem.
Yeah, that's crazy.
340-1590, 340-1590. You know what? I found, Dan, this was an interesting thing talking about that. So ex-girlfriend of mine, Barb, she didn't have the best credit, so they kind of stacked in a high interest rate. Well, after about a year or so, an outside company came in and said, hey, we'll get you a lower interest
We'll
rate.
refinance it.
But what they did is they didn't refinance it. They picked up a fee between the refinance company.
Somebody
700
sold the note.
Yeah, but they refinanced. No,
They
a new
discounted it.
Or did
lender
she
came,
have to
discounted
agree
it.
to that, though?
a new
She-
lender came in and took out the first lender, and the people that did it got a $700 commission,
Yeah.
and she got half as much interest rate. It all worked. I mean,
But sometimes
you
you have to
paid a lot of the interest up front after the first year
Yeah,
and a half.
right.
You're paying a lot of that interest up front.
You already paid it.
Here's a real good strategy I always tell people. We truly have some good credit unions here in St. Lucie County. Now, some of them say you have to live in St. Lucie County, all right? But
Well, they need to know where to come to get the car if you don't pay.
There's some some companies here, credit unions. You join them, you start a little savings account or a checking account, and I'm telling you what, they will work with you here locally to help you get a much better deal, and you should take advantage of that. Not just the bank or not just what the car dealership has to offer you. There are lots of places you can go to look for better value.
So you
Do
say
your
you
homework.
shop for.
you can't go in emotional and wanting
No.
to buy a car real bad and then fall
Listen,
asleep
Joe,
and sign the
other
papers.
than a house, buying a car is probably the most expensive
yeah,
thing you
yeah,
buy.
yeah.
So you're saying shop for your money first.
Absolutely. And if you think about, I was actually thinking about this coming up today. I'm thinking, I am such an idiot. I bet I have spent $500,000 on cars since
Over the
I was
year,
a kid. I've spent nothing. I have spent so much money on it, and what do I have to show for it? Not a lot.
Did you have fun?
Oh, I did.
Okay,
I
then
did. I
it
got
was
lots
worth
of
it.
trouble too, but
But here's an interesting thing: the cars that you got in the most trouble with were the cheapest cars.
those were the first cars.
That's
and
what I'm
and
saying.
That's what you're saying,
What
Joe.
I'm saying, right? When you were young.
There's a lot of truth in that.
What was your first car? What year?
65 Plymouth Sport Fury, little 383 Hertz 4-speed, 411 rear. It was a real nice
I had
low
a '64 Plymouth Fury.
We were talking about
383.
Furies before you guys got here.
But my first car was a 1949 Ford Flathead 6.
Don't you
stick
wish
shift.
you had that car today?
$75.
Three on the tree? Or?
Yep, 3 on a tree.
Yeah.
$75 I paid for it.
And my first car was a 1957 Ford retractable hardtop.
Now, don't you wish you had
Wow.
that?
Don't you wish you had that?
Yeah.
Well, here's what happened to it. My parents owned a gas station, and I stopped driving the car in about 1966, and my father put it on the back lot of the station. And a young gentleman comes in, I think it was around 1969, and says, whose Fairlane is that? He said, well, my son used to drive it, and it had some rust spots on it. Well, he bought it from my father. They made a deal.
About $500.
That's exactly what it was. $500. Anyway, that's terrific.
He's now
Veronica,
restored
for
it
you
and
to
it's
hit
worth
it on
50
the head.
grand.
Anyway, fast forward to 1992. I go down with a couple of friends to the dog races in Kenosha, about 40 miles south of Milwaukee, and there's an old car show going on at the dog track, and I see this white Ford Fairlane, and I walk up to the guy and I said, where'd you get this car? And he said, I bought it many years ago from a guy who had a service station. So I said, you're driving my car.
There you go.
And
Did you say you'd buy it back from him
and
for $500?
No. And he says, what do you mean you're driving my car? And I said, if this is my car, my initials are scratched in the back of the behind the driver's seat. Sure enough, they were.
No kidding. Yeah.
And we became friends, and next summer he calls me up and he said, I've been invited to a Memorial Day parade in Sheboygan, a
Right.
city just north of Milwaukee.
yeah, right.
And he said, how would you like to go up with me? I'll pick you up. So he comes over to pick me up, and we go out to the car, and he starts going around to the passenger side, and he says to me as I'm going to the passenger side, where are you going? So I said, I'm getting in the passenger side. He said, oh, no, you're not. He said, this is your car. You're driving today.
That's cute.
Well, when we got up there, the media was all over the place, and the story started to get around. Well, the media all picked it up. There was a newspaper article.
Wasn't that nice?
2 TV stations had it on the
Did
news.
you save the article?
Huh?
You have the
Yeah,
article?
but I have no idea
Where
it
it is.
after all these years.
Now, have you ever tried to buy it back, or you
No.
thought about buying it back?
No. But
It wouldn't be $500 bucks.
No kidding.
No, but even if it was, 25 to 50,000, still a good value.
Now, this is a financial talk show, so I've got a question for you, Dan.
Yes.
What if I did buy that car back?
Okay.
How would insurance be? Would I be paying a lot more for insurance? On
Could
that
be,
car?
could be. If Greg was here, that's what he'd say. Could
Hey,
be.
clear
might be.
title.
Here,
How about
here's-
probably?
Here's what I would recommend. There are specialty carriers. So the first thing I would say is this going to be your everyday driver? And unless you're foolish, you're going to say, well, no, I'm only going to drive it occasionally, maybe taking it to a show or two. There's some companies, Hemmings and other specialty carriers that say, hey, if you agree to only drive it like 2,000 or 3,000 miles a year and don't leave it at the mall unattended, we'll sell you a nice policy for $300 a year. All right. So now on the other hand, if you said, I want to be able to drive it everywhere and do everything and take it and leave it at the restaurant, well, it'll be expensive. You should get what's called a stated value policy, because technically it's an old beater. All right?
However.
So if you say, well, I want 50 grand for it, you're going to pay me first on a stated value policy. So there's lots of ways we could structure it. Most of the guys that have collectible cars, they get a really good deal for $200 or $300 a year.
And they don't drive them, like you
And they
said.
don't drive them much.
They sit in the garage and they
Do you
go to
have
shows.
to get that special antique car
Not necessarily.
tag or
No.
You can have different types of cars. I could get you a collectible car insurance policy on a brand new car. There are certain
Okay.
cars that come off the lot as a highly collectible car.
Brand new Bugatti.
Well, highly collectible.
Well, I think if you can afford a Bugatti, you can probably self-insure.
you should be
You
able.
just about, isn't that the truth? 340-1590, 340-1590. So back in '04, Dan Warren, independent insurance agent, Joe Martek, financial advisor, Greg Fasula, attorney, started doing radio shows so we could answer questions for people that each individually might know, but we collectively knew because we were sitting next to the guy that knew the answer. And then over a period of time, we added Ms. Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, especially when the real estate bubble hit in the last recession, which brought in Mike Paulus, mortgage broker, because people kept saying there was no mortgage money available, and there always was. It just went back to the old rules that you had to prove you could afford to make the payment.
And that's not a bad rule, Joe.
It's a good rule. It's a good rule.
Let's face it. If they don't have some rules and regulations, the general public ends up picking up the tab when things go south as they've done before.
Well, I look at when a major recession hit, banks got bailed out, all kinds of stuff happened. What's the taxpayer? I mean,
And what always bothered me is the small businessman really didn't get bailed out.
No,
There
not
were
at all.
certain people who gave the impression we were too big to fail because if we fail, look at all the damage it's going to do to the economy. And I didn't really like that, to be honest
But
with
they
you.
did roll back. This last week, Trump signed something. I have no idea how much was rolled back of the Dodd-Frank stuff.
Right. Well, that remains to be seen how it all plays out. I always see these bills as they're coming through the session, and we hear about all the pros and cons
Right,
depending on about
right.
which side of the aisle is talking about it.
Right.
The truth is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
usually.
yeah. Miss Victoria Lloyd, speaking of which, she just showed up.
Well, hello there.
Yeah. Which is very good, very good. Anyway, we were talking about nonsensical stuff here that made no sense because Alan went out and bought a brand new car, and he fell asleep while he was buying it, and he signed the paper, and he paid sticker price plus they bought out his lease, and he got called laid with no loving.
Is this the truth?
True.
Okay.
But when you buy a car like that, enjoy it.
What would you buy?
A brand new Toyota pearl white, gorgeous.
It's a Camry.
Oh, is it outside?
Yeah.
I got to
Oh, yeah.
see it when
It's
I
really
leave.
a
It's a
nice
good-looking
looking car,
car.
and
Well,
he
that's
loves the
great.
car.
I've walked around it. I'm thinking I should buy one of these.
Alan,
This
did you
looks good.
scratch your initials in the back seat yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. We were just saying Alan had a car when he was a young man,
Oh, wow.
first car, and he scratched his initials into the back seat of it. Well, he found that same car, 20 years later? Guy restored it?
Actually, it was 33 years later.
33 years later, and they restored it, and then ended up with Buddy for the guy and went to car shows with him.
I scratched my initials in the fender with a telephone pole on my first car.
Right.
Wow, that's great.
Well,
Yeah.
he didn't quite mean it. His initials were already in the
It was
telephone pole.
That's right. That's right.
And they got embedded in the car. 340-1590, 340-1590. Hey, speaking of, I heard that real estate market nationwide was up overall 6.8% year over year. Some markets are much hotter, obviously.
I think our market here is hotter than that.
Yeah, but that is that, you know.
Well, I think we do better than most places out there. We have more available, and our prices are so
excellent. They're excellent.
Reasonable and excellent. I mean, you can't go
but
anywhere and find
prices
what we
still
have.
went up, though.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but
So-
up to what? I mean, what are you comparing it to? So
No. What they said was from a year ago.
absolutely, it's up. We were talking about that yesterday when
Yeah.
I was showing properties.
Yeah.
And
can't
I think it went up like totally like 23% or
Yeah, bigger
20
number, yeah.
It was in the 20s.
See,
But look
Florida-
how far it dropped, too.
Well,
It dropped
it-
quite a bit.
absolutely.
So, depending on where you're starting from, 23% may be a lot. And somebody who had a really expensive home, 6% may actually be a higher number.
yeah.
That's correct. Yeah.
340-1590, 340-1590. So I see interest rates have edged back down a hair. The 10-year T-bill came down a hair, so maybe a quarter of a point or
You know, if
something.
it goes up a quarter or down a quarter, it's still an excellent value.
Single digits. I was telling that to the person also. I mean, where are we going to go? Like we called Mike, in the car and was asking him about a construction loan
Right.
or a regular loan, depending if we want to build or go with something pre-existing. Now we looked at some of these houses. Now I'm telling you, 5 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms. Almost 4,000 square feet. That's a lot of homes
Big house.
for under 400,000.
Yeah.
That's not new construction.
That's correct. So the thing that we're saying though, one was a 2017 though. They just finished it,
That's
and another
about
one's
new.
a 2006. But if I had to go repeat
Today?
that with a builder today, we're not going to be able to get it at that value.
No kidding. No
and this
kidding.
is what I try to show people where your value is. You can make any decision you want to, but I really try to make people understand where they're at, and that's where they're. Now, once we started. We were going to look at lots. So we went to go look at lots, and they want a half acre and larger. And when you have a half acre and larger, it's a commodity. It's a little
hard to
different than
find.
our quarter acres,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
are
than the
80 by
standard.
125.
Right.
And we said, oh my gosh, here's one that has 3 in a row. Isn't this great? Now we're talking 116,000 for 3 lots. They faced a gas station.
Wait a minute. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, so much for that, right?
Right. So this is what I try to make people. It's not just a slam dunk when you're trying to build. You have to take time to make sure you like a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Then we have to go search for the lot that's perfect. Then we have to talk to the builder, and then that builder's got to make sure that's a buildable lot on top of it.
Of course.
Now, you got some good lots, let's say, around the Midway Road, White City, Westertown, but a lot of people think that's too rural.
Well, some people think that's rural, and just because it says Fort Pierce, I
Yeah.
hate to say this,
Yeah.
they won't go there.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
It's like, and I love that area.
Oh, it's
I
beautiful.
Absolutely
Beautiful area.
love that.
And
Yeah,
didn't
I agree.
downtown Fort
And there's
Pierce,
a lot of them there on the water.
didn't it just get rated as one of the top 20 downtowns in the country?
What?
We did.
Yeah.
Top 20 for what?
For like the Mayberry look.
The Mayberry look.
Hey, when I was in my beauty patch, I was in the top 10. I still didn't win it. So it's the same thing.
I love downtown
Well, downtown
Fort
Fort Pierce is neat. Even
Yeah.
if the theater lost $1 million last year.
Yeah, and then the Lyric Theater's losing balconies outside, and they're saying,
Well, people
but it's
are-
okay, it
But
just
it's okay.
fell.
No,
It's
just
something
don't
that
jump up and down when you're in the balcony,
That's
right?
right.
happened. No, this was the outside balcony.
Outside.
I know.
That was kind of scary, though.
Well, it is.
I could be standing there eating a hot dog and it fall on my head.
Well,
I'd have
yeah,
to
but
be
you got some
careful.
You'd
natural
own it.
buffer.
You'd own it.
340-1590, 340-1590. Anyway, so we started doing the shows. We've been able to answer questions for a whole bunch of people, and we invite anybody to call in whenever,
Right.
ask about anything. And we might actually have a real caller, or we might have
I guess.
an interloper here. We will find out. Mike, it's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Hello. I'm calling. I'm glad Miss Lloyd is there. She might be able to help with what I'm calling to ask about. Long ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I attended classes out at IRJC, a college west of Fort Pierce. It was brand new at that time.
You're saying you're kind of
You're
old,
dating
Mike.
yourself.
Yes. And I was learning to fix TVs and stereos out there. And in that time, we were hearing word of a new town coming west of Fort Pierce out Orange Avenue in the ranch areas. I think it was Atlantic Richfield. It's going to have oil refinery, 2,000 homes. I mean, they were big plans.
Big deal, right?
And we were hearing about it. I got trained, and I drove my little old VW bus up to Boston and got hired in at a TV radio store as a repairman, a bench technician. And in that time, I worked 3 years and then learned that the school board of St. Lucie County could use me in their maintenance for electronics. So I came back to Fort Pierce, and no one ever knew anything about it. There was never a word. Nothing had happened. And I wondered if Miss Victoria
You ever hear
knew
of that
anything about it.
Atlantic Richfield? That's a big company.
I didn't, and that's not far from where Meadowood was.
Yeah,
and
right.
it's not far from the
Right.
Orange Blossom Mall where it used to
Right,
be
right.
located. But no, I didn't hear anything about it.
Huh.
Yeah, well, they've been doing that, and of course, in South Martin County, doing the same thing. Of new towns, 2000. Look at Tradition became a new town.
Yes.
Some of these things actually do happen. Martin Downs, Palm City. Remember, that's back in, I can remember that when it first started.
Well, I can tell you this too.
Yes.
They talked about a lot of these when we had the boom. It's like east of US 1. A lot of people said they did St. Lucie West. That said that was our downtown area, but a lot of people said it was too far west. So they were going to use east of US 1 as our new downtown area also. And because everything dropped so quickly, it never got finished. So
No.
I'm sure there was a lot of talk about it, but nobody jumped in there.
Yeah, well, you were talking back.
Timing.
You're probably talking back in the 60s or 70s,
Yes.
weren't you, Mike?
Yes.
1970.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was there in the 70s and early 80s, so and I didn't hear anything
I
about
bet
it.
you I could contact somebody over there at Gettler and Sons. They've been around here for a long time. Did an awful lot of
Could be.
the integral work for some of these developments.
Yeah.
I
I'd
bet you
love to
somebody over
know.
there might know, because it would have been a big discussion by a lot of the older Fort Pierce families who would probably have been involved. Mike.
So you
Or
gonna
how about calling over in the county?
Last week's talking about water prompted me to think back. You all may know the stories of Fellsmere and Indiantown, that they were supposed to be big boom cities with
yeah,
big
yes,
plans.
Yep.
My brother and I motorcycle miles of roads northeast of Fellsmere that are still there, roads to nowhere out
Yep.
to the woods.
Yeah.
And evidently hurricanes or floods, something like that stopped
It's still a
them.
big agricultural entity out there. Fellsmere Farms does an awful lot of citrus. And in Indiantown, really, if you go out there, the old train station is a nice little restaurant and hotel now.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to be where people would come and the boom was going to start. But everybody wanted their little town to be the next boom town.
You know what, Mike, and I think if you remember good old General Development, who put in thousands of miles of streets all over St. Lucie County,
course.
among other places in the state. But there was also a little area called Scottsmore up north a ways.
Well, you got to remember that
They put in lots and lots of streets.
GDC bought from Mackle Brothers.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
so if you really want to go
That's
back.
right, Mackle Brothers is. I saw a lot of their homes that
Absolutely,
they
yeah.
had built.
Yeah, it was the big boom in Florida where people were paying $15,000-$20,000 for a lot that they couldn't sell for $1,000 later. That
Or
was.
100.
Or,
You had to really produce up at that TV place up in Boston, or you were out the door. There was what I call the School of Hard Knocks was really in place in those years.
Yep.
Now I'm hearing all about sensitivity. I wouldn't want to go through life demanding and expecting sensitivity. I don't think that really helps you obtain empowerment. I wondered how you all feel about that, what's going on.
Well, you're talking to some conservatives here, so we're not too sensitive.
Here's my position, and I tell my children this. I go, be thankful that you live in a country where there are so many lazy people. Because if you actually had all this competition for all the jobs that you're seeking, you'd have a hard way to go. Most people work hard enough just not to get fired. Yep. They don't really produce. They don't understand that the person who's paying them needs to stay in business and has to be profitable. Here in Florida, if you show up on time, do your job, you're a hero. and that should be just a basic requirement for every job, but it's not.
That's so true.
It's Ms. Victoria Lloyd, one of her favorite sayings, and it goes with everything, but she says, not all realtors are created equal. I mean, how many people have we dealt with in our life that don't return a phone call, that don't do what they say they're going to do, and they expect to make a living? It's just kind of a miracle.
It is.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. But, Mike, as sensitivity training goes, I will tell you, of course, I'm not a big Starbucks drinker anyway, but...
What is sensitivity?
That was amazing. That's amazing. You have to close your business to train somebody.
I'm telling you
that
to
just
be
blows
sensitive.
my mind, to be sensitive.
And it's so ironic because I think of that as a basically very liberal pertaining to people who don't need that kind of information.
They
or
want to be more
change in their
liberal.
life.
They want to be more
Now,
liberalized.
see, I believe in being an equal opportunity insulter.
There
All
you
right?
go.
If I insult everybody equally, then I'm sensitive.
In a nice way.
In a nice way.
You are so
in a loving way.
You are so sensitive. Did I tell you about my 911 date?
Your 911 date? No, tell me about that, Joe.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
Did you hear about my 911 date?
No.
You'll like this story because we're really big on talking business on this show. So I'm glad you called in on the sensitivity thing. But so I was dating this girl a while ago when I was in between women, and we dated a couple times.
Through 100.
And she is going to go out on my boat. I've got a 41-foot boat, and we're going to spend the weekend out at the sandbar and stuff. So we're out there, and everything is wonderful. And this other boat shows up, and it's got two extremely old people. Now, I'm regularly old, but I'm not extremely old.
Yeah.
And they're trying to anchor up, and they're not doing a very good job. And she says, go help them. And I said, well, give them a few minutes because some boaters get upset when you try to help them too soon. So she swims over there and waves me over, and I go swimming over there, and bigger than I'll get out, it's a client of mine for the last 25 years. So then the family showed kids that I haven't seen since they were 10 are now 25 and 35 years old. And we're all having a great time. Now, Mike, you might have a hard time believing this, but sometimes when people are out on a boat, they manage to imbibe a little. Can you imagine that happening?
Of course. I've never been in a boat that didn't have a supply, actually.
The libations?
So we were there, and all of a sudden, and everybody's starting to leave. Well, this guy had a 26-foot double-engine open fisherman and 8 or 10 people on the boat, and he starts to take off, and one of the girls on the boat decides to get off the boat. Just at about the perfect time she could get chewed up with the prop. So this date of mine was standing right next to me on the rail, and she's screaming in my ear to do something. So I yell at this guy to stop, and he did, and she keeps screaming at me, and I very sweetly told her to be quiet. Not necessarily in that way or those words.
Or that tone, maybe.
Did you use your captain tone?
And Mike, can you believe that? It didn't slow her down a bit. Can you imagine that happening? So I added another word, expletive deleted to it, and that kind of slowed her down a little bit. And then after everybody left and nobody got hurt, she said, okay, I'm out of here, take me in. I said, hang on now. If I go in now, I might get a BUI, boating under the influence. Mm-hmm. It's dark. I don't like driving at dark. Calm down. Let's agree we'll never see each other again. Relax. Tomorrow morning we'll go in and, we don't need to talk. We don't need to do anything. And she said, okay. About an hour later, 9 o'clock or so, sheriff boat pulls up next to me. Now, I know all these guys out there because I've been doing this for years and years. And I said, hey, guys, how you doing? And they said, hey, did you call 911? And I said, no. You got a female on board? And I said, yes. Can we talk to her? So she came out and they said, did you call 911? And she says, no. Did you call anybody? Because the story about the altercation and people and imbibing and yelling and screaming. And she goes, oh, my God, I called my girlfriend. Well, the girlfriend called 911 because I'm sure she painted me out as, not Don Giovanni here. Now, the moral of the story is the best part you'll ever hear in your whole life. The sheriff's boat said, ma'am, you need to come with us. The moral of the story is if you get a date you don't want and you're out on a boat, you call 911, they come and take her.
Well, I have a
How
money
about him?
question.
Do they come and take him?
I have a money question. I keep hearing about marked and unmarked cash. Can you all fill us in on what that's all about?
Well, banks sometimes mark cash. That's going to be stolen. Cliff wants to say something here.
You'll probably get stopped someday, and you'll see those blue lights, and you'll be afraid they're bringing her back. High-speed chase.
Luckily, she never did call back or hear. She did apologize on her way out, though, which made the police feel a little better.
Golly, that's
And you say you knew these police officers?
Oh, yeah.
And they knew it was wise to take her away? Is that what you're trying to tell us,
No,
Joe?
I thought it was a gift.
A gift.
I'm thinking, hey, guys, Christmas time comes, I'm buying you guys a present. They did ask me, what did I say that upset her? And I said, I said, be quiet, sweetly, and added an expletive deleted.
Please.
And they said, that usually works.
It was the please that you added.
Right.
That's quite a story. Well, my VW van was my first car, in case it's interesting.
I had a VW
now, that's
van.
worth a lot of money today, Mike.
I had a VW van that ended up on I-96 and will rest there for the rest of its life
Blew the engine.
Well, that was 2 brothers later, because you know how they stay in your family.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that was the last brother that got it, and it blew up, and he said that's there for its resting piece. You know how up north the floor was all rusted out, and we stuck rags in it. You remember those days?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, when I came in the 70s and I was here and I didn't bring a car and I flew in and I wasn't sure I was going to go, so I swore I'd never have a stick shift, and I was going down the road and they had this VW Beetle. It was cute, a little green one on the side of the road, and the guy said he wanted like $1,500 for it. This was in the 70s. And so, anyway, I said no, and I said, I'll give you $900. He said, I just turned down more than that, but he gave it to me anyway. So I figured something was really wrong with it, but there wasn't.
But I bought it anyway.
But I did. I trusted him. So it was a stick shift, and I had a date that night, and I got home, and I was in a rush, and I pulled up in the driveway, and I popped the clutch, and it went up 3 steps and went through the Florida room. And I drove it right through the Florida room. Well, I'm telling you, I'm like, oh my gosh.
How was the date?
It was nice. It was great. I mean, I was in a rush. I'll never do that again, though. But I felt so silly that I had to pop a clutch. So I called my parents to say, hey, Dad, how are you? My Italians. He said, fine, how are you? I said, well, I just drove the car through the Florida. What? No. Oh, my. I said, I'm hurt. He said, what's wrong? I said, you didn't even ask how I was.
Yeah, right.
It didn't even wasn't important to you. It's like, what did I do?
Hey, Mike.
I've spent half my life's income on cars, and I don't regret a bit of it.
Well,
now
that's what
I have
Dan-
a VW Tiguan, and I love it.
Yeah.
Dan was just saying a few minutes ago that he probably spent $500,000 in his lifetime on cars.
I believe it.
But
Oh,
the-
yeah.
And then, but what happened is, and I said, but did you have a good time? And he said he remembers getting in trouble. And if you heard the beginning of the show, and I said, that's when you got your first cars that were the cheapest cars.
Cheap cars.
Hey, Mike, thanks for checking in with us, man.
Thanks
We
for
appreciate
calling.
hearing from you. And marked money, listen, if you ever do a bank robbery, careful how you open the bag up, because it might explode and
It
have
blew,
orange paint
right?
all over the
Is
place.
it orange or blue?
With that Iran deal, every time I hear about it, they talk about marked or unmarked money, and I don't know what I'm hearing, what it means. So
Yeah.
you kind of help clear that up.
I think when they
As long as it
That's dirty
spends,
money.
it's okay for me.
Yeah. I think what they did, they gave that was our boy Trump's thing was they gave him it was $1 billion in real dollar bills. It was, I mean, cash money. He said they had to truck it, and it was so much money.
I would have given him the money that was slated to be burned and destroyed. Just give him that.
Yeah, but it still made spend.
Oh, it'll spend.
Hey, Mike,
Okay.
Thank you.
thanks for checking in, my man.
Have a good day now. Thank
You too. 340-1590, 340-1590. And we got Bulldog on the phone. How you doing, my man?
Hey, how's everyone doing today?
Good.
We
How are
got,
you?
you got Vic and Dan and me and Alan.
I know.
We're staying dry.
MPL.
Yep.
I haven't talked to you in quite some time. Please give me a call sometime.
I will.
I love that. Love talking to you. Alan, always a pleasure to talk to you as well, sir.
Wait a minute. You forgot about me.
Oh, no, wait a minute.
He'll
No,
get- he'll
Joe,
get to
Joe,
you.
you still... You know, as many women as you run through, and that's the best story you can come up with. I gotta be more recent than that. Come on,
This isn't
You know?
this isn't
I mean,
satellite radio. We
This
have to
isn't
watch what we say.
I'm not Howard Stern.
Yeah, and Dan the insurance man, I sent somebody else your way,
Well, I
sir.
appreciate that. Thank you.
But I do want to also talk to you about, you said that collector car insurance. You and I need to talk about that for a bit, because I think mine qualifies.
Hey,
So,
give me a call and we'll discuss it.
Yeah, let's do that, Dan. I mean, good stuff, you know?
All right, my man. Did you get drowned in all of this weather this last week?
No, but my swales are filling up, and I'm on the city of Palm Coast hit list because I keep calling and complaining until it gets fixed.
Well, you might get evicted yet. You keep it up, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm trying to buy the lot next to me anyway, you know, so I'm making some moves and stuff like that.
All right.
And you know, that's a Vic's alley, and I don't know if you know, I'm just doing it for the peace and privacy. So what do you think, Vic? I mean, you know, buy it as an investment and just see.
I think you ought to just give me the money and trust me.
I'd buy it.
Yeah,
we had
yeah,
talked
I know,
about that.
Dan. I bet you Vic could buy it too.
Yes.
You know, she's more like, yeah, it's going to go up in that value, even though it's
you
an
know,
ITT development.
I
and
think the
all of
problem
that.
would be this: if you incorporate it and make your lot a double under one address, you
Right.
may have a hard time spinning it off. So think about that very carefully.
Yeah, keep it
Bulldog.
separate.
Yes.
Oh no, definitely keep it separate, and that's why we talked, Dan, about you'd want separate insurance on that, and things
We might
like
be able
that
to
as
extend the liability to the adjoining lot. Sometimes the policies will allow us to do it since it's a continuous and contiguous piece of property. Many times we can extend liability over.
Oh, see, that is great too, because I'd like to, resell it as a profit later on, or sell the house with the adjoining lot.
Of course.
As
And
a
somebody else may
joint.
want that. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Or build
I
a
mean-
spec house and move it.
Oh no! I don't do speculation, my friend. No, I'm not into that.
Bulldog,
But
my man, Mary Beth hasn't shot you yet. I'm impressed.
Excuse me.
I said Mary Beth hasn't shot you yet. I'm impressed.
You know why?
You don't have a gun in the house.
Oh, I have guns in the house.
You
I
got
just
'em
haven't
locked
taught
up.
her how to use them.
Oh, okay. All right, listen, I got another call here hanging on, my man. Yell at us anytime, will you?
Yeah, and same goes for Alan and Vic. Okay, you guys.
Be
All right,
good.
thanks,
be good.
Bulldog. Bye.
Take care.
340-1590, 340-15. And
Did Amy
the
leave
other
us?
caller
Amy,
that called?
call us back.
Is it Ronnie or Ramey?
Amy.
What is it?
Amy.
That's an Amy?
That says Amy.
Oh, you know what? This is somebody calling up to pick on me.
Oh, you know her?
Yeah, all of a sudden. No one. I'm glad she hung up.
Probably an
Is it the 911 lady?
This is not the 911, but it's close enough.
811.
811.
It was before the 911.
340-1590, 340-1590. Remember that when Barb called up one time and pretended she was a Southern girl?
The blonde.
Oh, I wasn't here for that
No,
one.
and she
Yes.
had a perfect Southern accent, and she wanted to date me and have me go to work for me.
Well, and she still is.
yeah, she's still working for me. My God, this
She's
is
like
not,
a postage stamp.
it's not a pretty picture, but what can I tell you?
Oh, come on,
The
John.
forever
What would you
stamp.
do without her?
Oh, Lordy. 340-1590, 340-1590.
Lenny says that to me sometimes, and I start making a list. He says, I don't even want to see it.
No.
Well, if you'd let me do it with you, then I didn't have to make a list without you.
First of
I mean,
all,
I think it would be smart to
you
just
know,
agree.
back many, many years ago when I was dating, I had met this girl, and she said she made a list up of all the things she was looking for in a man, and she had like 28 or 30 items.
Well, you can get
And she said, I
disappointed
made all of
quickly.
them but 4 or 5. And I
So
said,
you're
well,
out.
which ones didn't I make? She goes, I'm not going to tell you. She goes, make up your own list. Well, I ended up making one. It was over 30 items long. Now, then you got to prioritize which ones are critical, like non-smoker. You know, that was a big one. But I mean, certain things you're willing to dance around a little bit, but some things are.
I
I
never even
never
thought
got
about
into that.
I never thought, and I don't even
Why
make
you
a
shouldn't?
grocery
You're
list,
married.
let alone
I'm just
a
saying, even when
person
I
list.
was not married, I didn't
You've
make a
always
list.
been married.
Never.
No.
Why would you make a list? That's crazy.
Well, I like the concept.
Dating to me has always been like an interview.
Well, that's what it
It's an
is.
interview.
The first date,
I
anyway.
mean, you got to find your compatibility. You got to know their interest.
Yeah, I looked
Who
you.
cares?
I remember you trying to find compatibility.
And what's that song? In all the wrong places.
In all the wrong places, right?
I think I'm a country song.
Yeah,
No,
boy.
I did well.
Well,
I was. She
listen.
said you were on my
there
coattail. I had problems.
There are stories we cannot tell, but 340-15.
But we'll write a book. We could do a good.
You
book.
could do it in a book because you can, once, especially after you're dead, nobody cares.
The names have
I'm
all
never
been
gonna
changed.
die.
Names have been changed.
To protect the innocent.
Names of the innocent and the guilty. 340-1590, 340-1590. But other than that, Vic, now interest rates are still below 5%, right?
Well, when I was talking with Mike yesterday, he was talking maybe a 4.75. They had just come in,
Right.
And like I said, the people were like getting a little 4.75. Like they used to have the 1%. Remember when they were adjustable,
yes.
1.32? And I said, it's single digits. Why do you care?
Yeah.
I mean,
Such a miracle.
It's a miracle. I mean, it's like free money.
Yeah.
It's very
I mean,
close to free money.
It is, and people don't even look at it that way.
I saw a CD offering was sent to me, 18 months, 2.75.
Yeah, 2.7.
The difference between 2.75 money and interest money is a very small
got Mike
spread.
Paulus on the
Very
line.
small spread.
340-1590. We got Mike Paulus on the phone. Hey, Mike.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Have you been listening or no?
I have. You guys have a good lead in there for me. Thank you so much.
You
Oh,
got
you're
it.
So
You got
welcome.
it.
Yeah, I told him we were talking yesterday.
Yeah,
with
so
my
I mean,
client.
the mortgage business is, I mean, the real estate's still moving and stuff. Interest rates are still good.
We have had a fabulous month. Our May has just been super.
Oh,
Superb.
good. So let's get
Superb.
that limousine and you take me out.
That's it. I guess that means you're buying
I
lunch.
don't have time to go out, Victoria.
Well, you're going to make it. Oh, well, we'll have fun without you. Just have it delivered to my house.
Well, just we'll call the restaurant and give them your credit card number and trust us.
Absolutely.
But other than that, Mike, I mean, everything in the world is getting good. Qualifying is they keep loosening up a bit. It's still not like it was, but it's better than it was 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, and every day they're coming out with some more innovative programs. They're testing the waters a little bit. I know we talked a little bit the last time on some of the new limited income documentation loans. So what we can do is we can use your deposits and your bank statements to verify your income. We no longer need to just solely look at tax returns and pay stubs.
Like for the self-employed, do you think that would be a good
Yeah,
market?
because there's a lot of businesses that maybe don't reflect all of their income on their tax returns, and sometimes they deal in a lot of cash transactions, etc. Well, with those scenarios, we can use 12 months worth of bank statements to verify income. Matter of fact, we had some new lenders just come around where we can verify just with two months worth of bank statements.
Wow.
What we do is we take your deposit.
You save your money for couple months.
Yeah, and to tell you the truth, they're the new stated income or no income loans, which, not all of those went bad.
Yep. Of course
not. They do them much more wisely now. They require some actual skin in the game. You have to put a pretty sizable down payment. Your credit scores have to be good. They're not giving the money away.
No.
You do have to qualify, but they're just getting a little bit more lenient on verifying the income.
Well, it was always tough for the self-employed. That was very difficult because tax returns can be 20 and 30 pages long, and there's multiple discount, and it's difficult to interpret some of those things.
We should get bonuses because we're self-employed. We're generating.
You do get bonuses.
Like what?
You get to come and do a radio show.
Oh, yeah, and I pay for it.
You're paying for that bonus.
I pay for that bonus.
And your point is?
Dearly.
Hey, Mike, other than that, everything else is good, huh?
Yeah, we actually have had a little downtick in interest rates over the last week or so. So if you are on the fence, you're looking to refinance or possibly buy a house, it might be a good opportunity now to lock something in at a little bit lower rate.
I heard. I was saying it this before you called in that 10-year T-bills went down 20 to 25 basis points. So I figured interest rates would come down, huh?
Yeah, they always tick down a little slower than they go up.
Of course.
Yeah, we are seeing a little bit of a reduction in rates, so it's a good time to take advantage of it. Also, we have a program out there. It's a conventional program. It's mainly for first-time home buyers, but it's only 3% down, and the interest rate and the mortgage insurance is significantly lower than if you were going for a standard conventional loan. So. It could save you quite a bit of money.
That's for first-time home buyers, you said.
Yeah, you have to. One of the buyers has to be a first-time home buyer. So,
what about? There's 3.5% down though.
FHA.
With FHA, that's
Okay.
the standard program, 3.5% down, and you do not have to be a first-time home buyer to use that program. And we still have that USDA program, which is 100% financing. Now, June 4th, they're going to go through some changes. They're changing the map that dictates where we can lend on those funds.
That's next week? Yeah.
Yeah, that's just next week.
Well, let me know with that, Mike. Maybe they'll come more into Port St. Lucie.
But if you apply today, as long as you apply before that date?
No, unfortunately not.
No.
That was a nice try, Joe.
Well, I was just working on it. I was trying to get Mike some business.
Do you anticipate the map to expand or contract, Mike? Or
they are definitely going to contract on where you can lend that program. So right now, if you look at the map, it pretty much mimics, in St. Lucie County, it mimics the I-95. In Martin County, it's going to mimic the Turnpike. So everything east
Gotcha.
of the Turnpike in Martin County will be off limits, will not be available with the USDA program, and everything east of 95 in St. Lucie County. There's still a couple little pockets up by Fort Pierce that you
Will
can use
qualify.
that program, but it's being much more selective.
Which they should. It's more
Well,
rural.
it's
in
more
Fort
rural,
Pierce.
absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what it's
Absolutely.
supposed to be
And it
for.
changes as the population grows, and I'm really kind of surprised we've had it as long as we've had, but it's still a great program if you can find a property that fits in that little niche.
Hey, Mike, thanks for calling in, my man.
Thanks.
Everything is good.
Okay.
Take care, buddy.
Bye.
Have a great day, Mike. Bye.
340-1590, 340-1590. Before we run out of time, let me talk about money a little bit. I'm still into my very favorite investment these days, which, everybody likes to make money. Nobody likes to not make money. But if you can get an insured investment, like last year, Alan, what did the S&P 500 do last year?
It was up about 25%.
So what happened is, if you were invested strictly in the S&P 500, which is 500 blue chip companies, you were making around 20% last year. Well, this year the S&P 500 is flat. And the Dow as of yesterday was actually down for the year.
And now it's back up. The market's having a good day, a rebound day. The Dow's currently up 246 points.
So it's making up for the yesterday's. And what happens is volatility.
A lot of volatility.
And that's always been. But if you look at the map, there's no such thing as just a pure line going up. It's always going to have a roller coaster effect. But over a long period of time, the S&P 500 has averaged 8 to 10% a year.
It creeps up.
Yeah, and it's just going on and on. So I tell a lot of people, though, when they're not so young, in their 50s, 60s, 70s, they said, yeah, if you're young, you got time to wait, outlast these roller coasters. But what if you're not so young? Well, that's where the insured investment comes in. It protects you in case you die on the wrong day. Your family's protected because they guarantee a lot of these companies you're going to get back your money. Some of them pay a 5% or a 6% gain. Some have our highest quarterly averages. And they do the same thing on a living benefit. They guarantee you, hey, in case the market dies, you're guaranteed income for life and you can't outlive it. So they do some really, really nice things to protect you. And then if you make too much money, hallelujah, cash it in, take it, spend it, do whatever you want. So there's a lot of flexibility. You have to know which company you're dealing with. My compliance people say you're supposed to know that the claims paying ability of these companies, but like Dan and I both, when it comes to insurance companies, we only want to deal with the top-rated companies who just don't want any aggravation.
Don't want problems. So
the concept that I try to do when I talk to somebody, hey, what's your goal with your money? What are you trying to accomplish? And a lot of times when you're, quote, retired, you're going to think through different eyes than you are if somebody in their 40s or 50s or 30s or 20s. They have a lot more time in theory.
Well, Joe, I look at it. There's a difference in time between when you want to have growth, and when you want to have income.
There you go.
So if you're not part of a company that has a retirement plan, and you started your own 401k,
right,
your own IRA. At some point in time, you may want to take that investment that you've been putting in every year,
right,
and saying, I'm not so much concerned about it growing. I need to be paid every month because I'm retired and I need an income.
Well, that's exactly what happens. When you, quote, retire, if you can't afford to, you've got Social Security, and then you're going to have, quote, pension or investment income. And if you are in a place that doesn't provide investment income in your investments, you might be in the wrong place. A lot of times I talk to people and they ended up retiring or leaving a company and they've got a 401k, 403b, 457, pick a letter, pick a number, and they don't understand how they work. Well, oftentimes these can be rolled over with no tax and put it into your own account, and then you can get some expert advice. Can you believe that? Expert advice? And then make sure it fits you so that you can achieve your goal. And know that no matter what, your family's protected and you're protected. No matter what. 340-1590, 340-1590. And if you don't want to talk to us on the radio, which is too late almost, you can call the radio station anytime. They'll take your name and number. We'll get back with you. Or they'll give you our name and number, whichever you prefer. 340-1590.
Well, Joe, let me throw this in real quick before we have to go. As everybody who lives here knows, we've had tremendous rain. Not to the point of flooding everything, but pretty close. I've had a tremendous amount of people call concerned about buying flood insurance. The federal program takes 30 days to go into effect, but there's a lot of companies that would allow you to endorse their homeowner policy with their own flood. And I have actually sold about a half a dozen this week where the new policy with the flood endorsement was less than their old policy.
Nice.
So there's some
So
advantages.
what are you saying flood insurance might run? Let's say we don't need it, and it's not a required area. What is it normally?
$150, $200 on this endorsement.
On this endorsement.
Depending on where you are, and they're not going to ask you to get an elevation certificate, which is
It's just based on the flood
saving
map.
you money. They're going to base it on what they know the flood map to be.
Dan, when you say 150, 200, you're talking annually,
Annually.
not monthly. Right?
Annually.
Well, he
yes.
was really talking weekly, but
you
that's
can
called
pay
a
me
bonus.
monthly if you like.
Now I pay $450 and I don't have to have it.
Don't have to have it. You're in a preferred zone.
So you might get a homeowner's
so I might
policy
be able
endorsed.
To get one where it's better. I
Absolutely.
could get it for less money than
Absolutely.
the $450.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah,
Because
so,
my policy's like with Frontline.
yeah, well, Frontline's a great company. We sell Frontline.
Yes.
So give us a call.
But they may not do the endorsement, do they?
They may not do the endorsement.
But
so
you can always roll into another company and get a better rate. You never know.
Right.
I mean, they don't like Italians, but you're an exception.
Sicilian.
You're Sicilian.
I'm either a full-blooded Italian or I'm a full-blooded mutt. Because
Well,
when
you
I
know,
saw somebody
if-
who was Italian, they said, "Forget it. There's no 100%."
Well, if
Italians
you're
in this world."
Sicilian, you're probably Greek then.
You think?
Oh, sure. The Greeks came sneaking over there. You know how they like those
I'm
Italians.
from Naples and Rome and
Oh, yeah,
and
well, that doesn't
Sicily,
count.
And Sicily, my dad.
340-1590, 340-1590. We out of time, Mother? 30 seconds. You can cure the
Whoa.
ills of the world in 30 seconds.
Well, at Orange Theory, we could do 200 rows.
Get in trouble. Yeah, 200.
Really? Absolutely. You don't know how they beat us up.
They beat you.
Go to Orange Theory, everybody, and call in.
All right, you guys, listen, thank you so much for calling. And those of you that didn't call in, thank you too. Have a
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.